with elements of transportation in Port of Spain and in East Port of Spain, and that includes as well the system of cable cars that have been mentioned. People don't understand those cable cars and what they mean. It is not a pie-in-the-sky idea. Some of those areas in East Port of Spain are impassable. They are up in the hills. All right, there's no road to get there. You can't get any cars to pass there. The people have already built their homes. They are inaccessible. How do you make the connection with them? How do you integrate them into the whole system and make that possible? And there are examples. And at the America's Competitiveness Conference in October 8th to 10th, and I hope all of you will register for that and come for it. It will be an intellectual and practical experience of a lifetime in Trinidad and Tobago, bringing people from academia, business, politics to Trinidad and Tobago to engage a number of issues that are important to the hemisphere and the world. And one of the people that we are inviting to come here is the former mayor, now the governor of the state of Antioquia, I think, I may be pronouncing it wrong, Antioquia, I think, in Colombia. And he's coming here, but he is one of the people who transformed an entire area that was worse than East Port of Spain and more depressed than East Port of Spain and poorer than East Port of Spain. And one of the elements that he used was the cable cars. So I want to mention as well the development of the framework for predictable use and development of national spatial land, the National Spatial Strategy that has been laid in Parliament, and that has a vision of the country for up to the year 2033, 2013 to 2033, and it has a vision for the country and a vision for the regions of the country, which will be elaborated by the various regions. We also have the incubators, which I mentioned, the establishment of the National Integrated Business Incubator Program, which is administered through the Ministry of Labor and involves a number of institutions. The Center for Enterprise Development, which is a career incubator and hatchery, and incubators for very strategic sectors and regions across the country, including active, very action-oriented approaches in the growth pools of the country. Commencement of the process of developing a national innovation policy, which we did in 2013. The national innovation policy will be a flexible framework for linking numerous actors and activities in the innovation ecosystem. And we are focusing on innovation as it relates to human capital development, intellectual property rights, the public sector, market development, research, science and technology, and finance. I think I've said enough, and I just want to close on this note. China has 1.3 billion people, I mentioned that, and we have 1.3 million people. In development terms, if human capital is important, and intellectual capital is important, and innovation is fundamental to the driving of the sustainable development process, there is no way that we can compete with China, right? The base of human capacity in China is so overwhelmingly in their favor that there is no chance for a country such as Trinidad and Tobago. You agree? Except if we understand development as having to do, if it is to be driven by innovation and be an innovation-driven economy, that what we have to tap is the human imagination. And the human imagination of 1.3 million people in a country of our size, 2,000 square miles, with the necessary networks and collaborations that are possible in the world system, gives us an opportunity to compete. It gives us an opportunity to be innovative. It gives us an opportunity to achieve sustainable development at a high level of per capita income, at an intense level of economic progress, and at a comfortable and desirable level of sustainability and self-sustainability. And I want to emphasize this business of the human imagination. And that means that we've got to begin to understand that the human imagination is something separate and distinct from educational achievement. You can have human imagination capacity of an overwhelming kind in a PhD. And you can have it from the graduates of the Arthur Lockjack Business School. But you can also have very innovative ideas that derive out of the human imagination from someone who is largely unschooled. So while education is important for skills, while it is important for intellectual capital, while it is important for brain power, while it is important for innovation, tapping human imaginative capacity, understanding that it is not necessarily tied to education is very, very important. To bring the human imagination of every citizen into the development process. And the way we can do it is in the places that they work, in the things that they do, in the communities in which they live. And that is very important. It didn't take a PhD to develop this steel band. And I don't think anybody with a PhD had anything to do with the development and evolution of Carnival. Now, intellectual work is important. For instance, Dr. Keith Nurse, who is also going to be speaking at our ACF conference, has done tremendous amount of work on the creative sectors in Caribbean society. How they work, what inhibits them, what we can do, etc. And therefore, you need the intellectual work to do that. But the imaginative capacity is not connected necessarily to educational achievement. And I want to say that we need to understand that this phrase called putting the human being at the center of development must not be a phrase in which we only talk about consultation with human beings and focusing on poverty alleviation and so on. There is an element of development that has to do with mindscape. I read many years ago a book written by Lawrence E. Harrison, who has written several books since then on the role of culture, the human dimension in development, etc. But Lawrence E. Harrison wrote a book 30 years ago called Underdevelopment is a State of Mind. I did not read it 30 years ago, but I read it 20 years ago. And the point that he is making is that there is a mindscape element, a disposition element, an attitude element that is critical to the development process and high achievement process. And he speaks about education and the importance of education and how it should be done, etc. But he makes the point that this business of development has to do with the mind, the mindscape, the attitude of mind, the disposition, the culture of a place, the attitude of the people in it, and it is very important. And I want to say that we need to focus now on human beings at the center of development, not only in terms of the traditional things that we have done, all right, but in terms of the poverty of mind, the poverty of the imagination, and the poverty of spirit. And we need to liberate that imaginative capacity in all our people. And I feel that that is the secret. That is the hidden dimension of development that we need to begin to tap. And that is going to be my focus, I think, for this stage of my life and career. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Minister Tuari, for a comprehensive and insightful speech that took us from the present to the emerging policies on competitiveness. We will now like to begin the actual panel discussion. And first, I would like to introduce our moderator for the panel, Ms. Rostand. There are also some housekeeping issues in terms of we'll have people passing around to take the questions from you, and they will pass them on, and they will be announced when we're finished with the actual discussion itself. So without further ado, I would like to ask the panelists to come center stage. And keeping in vein with the minister's speech, it is important to remember that it's about the thinking on competitiveness and innovation now, and not just simply talking about it anymore.
First to go. Are we on here?
Just check your mic, make sure that
Mine's on, I think.
Good.
Francis, you good? Good morning, Senator, the Honorable Dr. Botiwari, Minister of Planning and Sustainable Development, my distinguished panel, members of the media, and distinguished guests. I am Joanna Roster, the Program Director of the IMBDI here at Lockjack. IMBDI, for those who don't know, is the Masters in Business Development and Innovation. And for that reason, I'm really thrilled with the turnout here today, and of course, the Minister's presentation. My role here this morning is to guide this panel on hopefully an engaging discussion on driving innovation forward. I am respectful of time. I know we are committed to end this session at 10 a.m. SEMA, 10 a.m. So that gives us just about 30 minutes with a little time for thank yous and closing remarks. So I offer a suggestion to the panel talk for, say, 20 minutes and leave 10 minutes for audience questions. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so I will commit to that. So we're here to speak about, first of all, the current Global Competitiveness Report and the index, which, as the chairman and the minister have already said, Trinidad has decreased, for want of a better word, in its ranking in the index. But yet there's a bit of an irony where we are now in a different pocket, a different bucket, where they've put us in an innovation-driven economy. And if you go with the thinking that the minister spoke about, certainly, that your greatest advantage to being competitive on a world scale is to be incredibly innovative. There's a bit of a disconnect where you think we've decreased, but yet the report believes we are, more innovation driven. So I open the question to the panel. I am having feedback issues there. Move it up. So I open the question to the panel, and panel, by no means wait for me to call you by any time, feel free to interject. Your views on the disconnect with the decrease in competitiveness, but yet putting us into the more exciting, more thrilling pocket of being innovation driven. And perhaps, Francis, you can start us off there, being your role on the Competitiveness Council. Your view on that? great start. And I fully agree with you. The gap I sometimes have is Trinidad is by definition, nationally, culturally, a creative country. But there's a link between creativity and innovation that has, as you say, commercialization. And how do we get the idea to innovate commercial project stage to create that innovation within the economy? Nicholas,
Francis, there's innovation and there's innovation to market. And I think people always look, we've had some forums with Minister before on innovation and imagination. But from a business perspective and from our perspective is that innovation must be about a market. And that if you get in the process of innovation, of helping people to innovate with the view to getting to a market, now we're starting to address the situation of the other objectives of the country, which is diversification. And I don't think that we can speak about diversification in its real sense and expect that 1.3 million, a market of 1.3 million people to diversify our natural resource-based country. We really have to start talking about the market outside. And I think there's a little bit of absence in all the forums I've been to that speak to market. I'm happy to hear Francis talk about what is a market. And then innovation is along the lines that we talked about. Let's talk about products, we talked about services, but also a critical strategic advantage to a lot of us in the Caribbean is our go-to-market capability and how innovative that is. How do we get products and services to small islands such as St. Kitts, Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, and I think we take it for granted that we're not innovative, but the major multinationals that come into the Caribbean region have a hard time navigating logistics in the modern sense of the word. And I think that to give ourselves maybe a pat on the back as well as push ourselves further, that we've conquered that. But how do we now step outside of the region and use our innovative, what we've learned inside our islands that are segregated by water, to go into big markets and capture them from the outside in, an innovative distribution channel. So how do we not go to Bogota or Medellin or so, but we go to a small town of 1 million people, a small town of 200,000, start our footprint around there and then move into the center cities, because the cities, as you know, the multinationals are all going to be heavily involved in those areas. They only looking to stream off the top 20% of the 600 million people in Latin America in any case. So innovation around not necessarily just products, but also go-to-market capability is a critical part of innovation from my perspective.
Speaking, I listed out a number of points. He jogged a number of things in my mind, but he also covered a wide range of issues related to innovation. And both the panelists are spot on with this. But there's also, he touched on it slightly, but there's a big issue in this country, which is really more from a cultural perspective. We are a creative country, yet every single year we have a tremendous amount of challenges in really having a carnival that is really a world-class carnival because of logistical issues and because we are loath to change, to actually accommodate the fact that carnival has evolved, and therefore we need to actually come up with other ways in which we could actually have our enjoyment of carnival, portray our mass, but at the same time really create a bigger and more global carnival environment. And touching on that is really what is our burning platform. Cultural issues, there are two issues. What is our burning platform? What will cause us to want to innovate as a nation? Yes, we are classified as an innovation-driven country, and the chairperson actually said it very nicely. We need to actually put a lot of things in place to drive innovation. The minister talked about perpetual innovation. Well, if you look at perpetual innovation and look at Carnival, and you see a paradox there immediately. But we also have a situation in this country where it's an entitlement culture. So we sit down and we actually feel that we're entitled to a lot of things, and in truth and in fact, it does not allow us, that entitlement culture does not allow us to get off our butts and really innovate and do things differently. And until we change that culture within our country, we actually not going to be able to drive innovation sufficiently to the point where we become very much like a Singapore within our region, etc. That is a very key point that I want to emphasize today. We don't have much time, but certainly entertainment culture, what is our burning platform for change to want to be a more innovative economy? Yeah. So I'll start with those 2 points.
Yeah. I'm going to interject here a bit because I make my comment here, is that it's all well and good to say that you're an innovation-driven economy, but personally, in day life, I don't feel like Trinidad feels like an innovation-driven economy. You know, you try to get things done, you need an original letter, 2 forms of ID, a copy of your utility bill with your name on it. Traffic is debilitating every day. Roadworks takes place at the highest points of traffic in a day. You know, if you're an innovative economy, you would think that things happen smooth, they happen slick, that Trinidad would feel like an Apple store, for want of a better word. You know, that all aspects of the economy are working together to create that let's make things happen quick, fast, and efficient. But for some reason, we don't feel it. And I'm going to hand over to Graham here for his academic opinion here. There's another big gap for me that I believe that UE has a great source of intellect that is the engine for many of the innovation projects that could take place in the economy. But yet sometimes I feel from industry to UE, there's a big gap and a struggle. And I would certainly like Graham's opinion on that.
Well, let me start with Mr. Joe. I think that the phrase added to invention, and you don't need something that's very try to create. So you can have a nation full of creative, inventive people who are not inventive because there's not a perceived need or a drive or the conditions that would create that energy, because innovation is effectively diametrically opposed to passivity. So in order to be innovative, it requires massive investment of energy, of enthusiasm, of drive, of push, and something has to register inside people's hearts and minds to say, let's do it. Let's do it. And I think that's probably the thing that will be missing in the Trinidad context. We've sat pretty for a century on natural resources which have made the country rich, basically. And it's because of the wealth of the country that we're in that innovation-driven bucket in the GCR. It's not really because of the widespread innovative nature of the society, I don't think. But I think the fact that we're now in that bucket poses a very serious challenge. I mean, one of the things I noticed in the report, when it says when for some resource-based economies that have reached a very high level of income, the capacity to increase productivity of any other sector beyond mineral productivity, beyond mineral production will be based on the country's capacity to boost innovation. So in other words, you get to a certain level and you're plateau. You can't go beyond that level on the processes and systems that have brought you to that place. And I get the impression that's where Trinidad is. So maybe we are now starting to face a situation where the need is being generated. Because if you don't advance, you recede. And unless we want to face a future of recession, and I'm not talking necessarily economic recession, but I'm talking recession in terms of development in the nation, then there's a very real demand to press forward with innovation. So perhaps we are getting to the point where necessity is coming. But in terms of the role of universities, my specific interest is actually in that university-industry collaboration. And I think the minister hinted that we're weak in that area. I agree with that. I was brought up, quote unquote, from my career to this point, I basically straddled uncomfortably between industry and academia, and I would have been based in the university context part of the time, industrial context part of the time. And I think one of the things I felt very keen when I came into a UE, into the university,